2019, and we are here today to discuss Docket 0567, Message and Ordinance, amending the City of Boston Code, Chapter 6, Section 6-95G, the Solar Renewable Energy Certificate Revolving Fund. This matter was sponsored by Mayor Martin J. Walsh and referred to the committee back on April the 11th. The proposed ordinance seeks to amend the section of the City of Boston Code to Distributed Energy Resource Revenue Revolving Fund by striking out Solar Renewable Energy Certificates Revolving Fund. Further amendments will allow the city to use revenues from the fund to purchase offsets of greenhouse gas emissions, which shall be associated with the portion of the electricity consumed by the city annually, monitor, operate, and maintain existing solar arrays belonging to the city and the Boston Public School Department, and monitor, operate, and maintain Boston Public Schools' combined heat and power facilities instead of limiting revenue to the sale of solar renewable energy certificates produced by the city's photovoltaic arrays. One note of housekeeping, I want to remind everyone that this is a public hearing and it's being recorded and will be broadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and online. Joining us today is Joseph LaRusso, who's the Energy and Efficiency and Distributed Resource Finance Manager for the City of Boston's Environment Department. We're also joined by my colleague, City Councilor Matt OMalley and City Councilor Ed Flynn. So good morning and welcome. And if you have any additional opening comments, you have the floor. Joe.
Thank you, Councilor. My name is, you said, is Joseph LaRusso. I work in the Environment Department, and I'm a member of the city's Municipal Energy Unit. I'm here to provide testimony to the Council regarding the ordinance to amend the Solar Renewable Energy Certificates Revolving Fund. The purpose of the fund is twofold. To authorize, the purpose of the amendment is twofold: to authorize new sources of revenue for the fund and to authorize new categories of expenditure. Currently, one revenue source is authorized for deposit into the revolving fund: the proceeds of the sale of solar renewable energy credits that are produced by the city's solar arrays at the City Archives building and the Central Maintenance Facility. Those revenues are used to purchase carbon offsets of greenhouse gas emissions associated with a portion of the electricity consumed by the city. The ordinance would authorize two additional revenue sources for deposit into the fund, both of which are produced by Public School Department combined heat and power units. The first new source of revenue is the proceeds of the sale of alternative energy credits. The second revenue earned by Public School Department combined heat and power units is the demand response program hosted by the Regional Electric Grid Operator, ISO New England. Pursuant to the Commonwealth's Green Communities Act, a certain percentage of electricity must be generated by renewable technologies, including combined heat and power units. The Public School Department's combined heat and power units generate alternative energy credits, and these alternative energy credits can be sold for purchase by the utilities so that they can meet their obligations under the Green Communities Act. The second new source of revenues are payments for participation in the Regional Electric Grid Operator's Demand Response Program. At times when the electric grid is stressed, the grid operator will instruct enrolled participants to turn on their electric generating equipment in order to help meet temporarily high electric demand on the grid. Currently, 2 combined heat and power units at the Kent and Holland schools are enrolled in the Demand Response Program. The ordinance would also authorize the expenditure of fund revenues to monitor, operate, and maintain the assets that are producing the revenues: the Public School Department's combined heat and power units and the solar arrays owned by the Public School Department and the city. The goal is to have these categories of assets, the solar arrays and the CHP units, become financially self-sustaining while providing electricity savings to the city and environmental benefits as well.
Very good. Well, thank you, Joe. Any questions, Councilor Flynn, at this time of Joe LaRusso?
No, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Council Chair recognizes City Councilor Matt OMalley. Any questions at this time?
First a statement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Joe. This is a great way to begin the Friday, obviously. We're extraordinarily excited about this. Can you talk, how many schools are going to have PV panels on their roof in the next year, 5 years?
Well, currently there are 7 that have PV arrays. These are roof-mounted arrays that were installed, I think, prior to 2010.
Okay.
Going forward, the city is planning to install solar, both rooftop solar and canopy solar, through the Renew Boston Trust program. The city is currently in negotiations with an energy service company that is Honeywell. And if it executes an agreement with Honeywell, the first set of buildings that would be on which solar would be installed actually don't include schools. The school department, several other buildings that have to get back to you regarding which ones in particular.
Yeah.
Is escaping me right now. But the mayor also authorized in the current budget $35 million for a second round of New Boston Trust funding. And it's anticipated that, some schools would be included in that. And each time in that transaction, each time a building is reviewed for participation in the program, its potential for rooftop solar is considered. So
that 35 million is for all, will be split among all municipal buildings, including schools?
Correct.
Libraries?
Correct. But I'm sure you know that the school department accounts for 12 million square feet of the 16 total million square feet that, comprise the city's buildings.
And then finally, and I mentioned this before, I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it nevertheless. We sat in this room several years ago. There was some state grant that was available that would install panels at 3 community centers, and that would be used to power emergency communication equipment in the event of a natural disaster or otherwise. What's the status in that? Is the holdup with the state?
Well, there are actually 2 grants.
Okay.
You covered the objectives of both.
Yeah.
One grant was awarded actually to the city on behalf of Boston Medical Center.
Yeah.
And Boston Medical Center was constructing a CHP unit on the Menino campus of its, of the medical facility.
Yeah.
And that project has been completed. And that CHP unit is now supporting or will support the city's communications equipment, which is sited across the street from the CHP unit in the event of a grid failure.
Yeah.
The other grant was for approximately $1.4 million, and the requirements of that grant were to site both solar and battery storage at up to 4 BCYF buildings.
Yeah.
And, it was concluded that, that the budget that was given, actually I should back up and tell you that in addition, there was another requirement of that grant, and that requirement was to support those buildings for up to 72 hours in the event of a grid outage. And, we've been in conversation with the Department of Energy Resources, the agency that awarded the grant to the city, about the amount of storage that would be required to support 4 buildings for 72 hours and the amount of the grant. And so we've actually been in conversation with the Department of Energy Resources about that requirement, about the cost, about whether or not the amount that was awarded would be sufficient, and also a requirement of the Department of Energy Resources that the city own the storage, at least initially. We're advocating for a third-party financing that is, allowing another entity to own and operate the storage and to pay for the storage, with a monthly fee over time. That would allow the third party to capitalize on tax benefits that the city itself would not be able to capitalize on because, of course, it's an exempt entity. And those tax benefits we thought would, help reduce the cost of the project overall and allow us to buy more storage.
So what happened to the $1.5 million?
We still have it, and we still
sitting in an account.
We do, yes, and.
But if we go through a private vendor which is somewhat common, where if there are many vendors that will install PV panels on your roof, pay for it free of charge, you'll get a break on your electricity, but they'll own it. Wouldn't a similar scenario be the case with this? If we're going to allow someone else to build it and manage it and reap the benefits of it, doesn't our cost drop dramatically?
Our cost to have it installed?
Yeah.
That's the hope, that
Yeah.
we would capitalize on the tax benefits because they would pass those benefits through to us and lower the price for the installation. They would also be able to register the battery to, reduce the demand charges that are associated with the accounts where the storage will be provided, reduce capacity charges as well, and possibly to enroll the storage in demand response as well. So these would be additional
how does this
sources of
affect the
revenue.
timeline? Because
Well-
one of the BCYF sites is Curtis Hall in Jamaica Plain, and I'm
That's
very
correct.
excited to one day see those beautiful PV panels on the roof.
That's
so
correct.
when can we expect the ribbon cutting?
Well, I can tell you when we can expect to have an RFP issued, which is probably in the next several months.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that, and thank you for your work, and thank you,
Of
Mr.
course.
Chairman. It's a great issue here.
Thank you, Councilor. Quick question for Joe. How much revenue is currently being generated, and will we see, we expect a change in revenue based on this
Yes,
ordinance?
because we are adding these two new additional sources of revenue. I've made projections because,
Right.
the price varies on the alternative, on the solar renewable energy credits. Our demand response revenues depend on how many times we'd respond. But my estimate was that from all of the sources of revenue, there would be slightly more than $200,000, $213,000.
Okay. Right. And then you had mentioned the assets, so, and there's a piece of this where we're monitoring, operating, maintaining. Are our assets in good condition? And is there any sort of, because as we're going through the budget now, we're going through capital, not sure whether or not capital is accounting for some of those assets and making sure those assets are in good condition to take advantage of this, but I guess
Yes,
an
yes, Councilor.
overview of our assets to date and their overall condition from your perspective?
I believe that the solar is in good condition, but, it does need to be continually monitored to make sure that it's operating correctly. And, these revenues would allow us to put in place an operation and maintenance contract as well, so that, if any parts break down, for example, inverters are usually the weak link in a solar array. It'll be identified right away, so we won't lose any production from those units, and the repairs will be made immediately. It's a slightly different story with the CHP units. The CHP units, there are 29 units. They're at 20 schools around the city, and they were installed in the mid-2000s, and they're in their condition varies because they've been run pretty hard. There are several that are actually offline at this point. There are others that have recently been refurbished, and that those are the units that have qualified for the alternative energy credit production and the demand response. With these revenues, we're hoping to refurbish more and perhaps, repair other units so that they can be brought back online, so that the whole portfolio of CHP units could be up and running and saving the city money and offsetting.
Thank you, and that was very
issues.
helpful. If there's anyone here wishing to offer public testimony, may do so now, or have a hold your peace, seeing and
Not now.
hearing no desire for additional public testimony. That will conclude the public testimony portion, and just an opportunity to say thank you to Joe LaRusso for your time and talents on behalf of our city and its residents. And I know this is an important issue for the mayor. I know Councilor OMalley has done a lot of work here, great work on the council around these issues as well. So we're excited to have this ordinance amended and try to get this before the council as soon as possible for a council vote. So with that, if you have any final parting comments, otherwise we can conclude with respect to docket 0567.
No further comments.
Very good.
Councilor, thank you very much.
Good. And it's good to see you, Joe. My colleague, any colleagues? Very
No,
good.
thank you,
So
Mr.
with
Chairman.
respect to docket 0567, a message and ordinance amending the City of Boston Code, Chapter 6, Section 6-9.5G, the Solar Renewable Energy Certificate Revolving Fund. The Committee on Government Operations is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.